The Jap machine gun abruptly stopped firing, leaving only carbines to pop off an occasional shot. A dozen or so Japs ran at a crouch past the burning truck, heading north with their weapons. Grandad ordered his men to fire, but few responded. The dike was dotted top and bottom with the bodies of soldiers. Wounded men were moaning and wailing in the sorghum field. Grandad fired, sending Japs flying off the bridge. Rifle fire from the western side of the road cut down more of them. Their comrades turned tail and ran. A bullet whizzing over from the southern bank of the river struck Grandad below the right shoulder. As his arm jerked, the pistol fell from his hand to hang by its strap from his neck. He backed into the sorghum field. "Do Guan," he cried out, "help me!" Ripping the sleeve off his shirt, he told father to take a strip of white cloth from his wristband to bind the wound. That was when father said, "Dad, Mom's asking for you." "Good boy," Grandad said. "Come help Dad kill every last one of those sons of bees." He reached into his belt, removed the abandoned Browning pistol, and handed it to father, just as Burglar Liu came crawling up the dike, dragging a wounded leg. "Shall I blow the bugle, Commander?" "Blow it," Grandad said. Kneeling on his good leg, Burglar Liu raised the horn to his lips and sounded it to the heavens. Scarlet notes emerged. "Charge!" Grandad's command was met by shouts from the west side of the road. Holding his pistol in his left hand, he jumped to his feet. Bullets whizzed past his cheeks. He hit the ground and rolled back into the sorghum field. A scream of agony rose from the west side of the road, and father knew that another comrade had been hit. Burglar Liu sounded his horn once more. The scarlet blast struck the sorghum tips and set them shaking. Grandad grabbed father's hand. "Follow me, son." Smoke billowed from the trucks on the bridge, gripping father's hand tightly. Grandad darted across the road to the west side. Their progress was followed by a hail of bullets. Two soldiers with soot-streaked faces witnessed their approach. "Commander," they cried through their cracked lips, "we're done for." Grandad sat down dejectedly in the sorghum field, and a long time passed before he raised his head again. The Japs held their fire. The crackling of burning trucks was answered by periodic blasts from Burglar Liu's horn. His fear now gone, father slipped off and moved west, carefully raising his head to peep through some dead weeds. He watched a Japanese soldier emerge from under the still unburned canopy of the second truck, open the door, and drag out a skinny old Jap in white gloves and black leather, riding boots, a sword on his hip, hugging the side of the truck. They slipped off the bridge by shinnying down a stanchion. Father raised his Browning, but his hand shook like a leaf, and the old Jap's ass kept hopping up and down in his sights. He clenched his teeth, closed his eyes, and fired. The Browning roared. The bullet went straight into the water, turning a white eel belly up. The Jap officer dived into the water. "Dad!" father yelled. "An officer!" Another explosion went off behind his head, and the old Jap's skull splintered, releasing a pool of blood on the surface of the water. The second soldier scrambled frantically to the far side of the stanchion. Grandad pushed father to the ground as another hail of Jap bullets swept over them and thudded crazily into the field. "Good boy," Grandad said. "You're my son, all right." What father and Grandad didn't know was that the old Jap they just killed was none other than the famous general Nakaoka Jiko. Burglar Liu's horn didn't let up. The sun, baked red and green by the flames from the trucks, seemed to shrivel. "Dad," father said, "Mom's asking for you. She wants to see you." Is she still alive? Yes. Father took Granddad by the hand and led him deep into the sorghum field, where Grandma lay, her face stamped with shadows of sorghum stalks and the noble smile she had prepared for Granddad. Her face was fairer than ever. Her eyes were open. For the first time in his life, Father noticed 2 trickles of tears slipping down Granddad's hardened face. Granddad fell to his knees beside Grandma's body and closed her eyes with his good hand. In 1976, when my granddad died, Father closed his unseeing eyes with his left hand, from which 2 fingers were missing. Granddad had returned from the desolate Japanese mountains of Hokkaido, scarcely able to speak, spitting out each word as though they were a heavy stone. The village held a grand welcoming ceremony in honor of his return, attended by the county head. I was barely 2 at the time, but I recall seeing 8 tables beneath the ginkgo tree at the head of the village, set with jugs of wine and dozens of white ceramic bowls. The county head picked up a jug and filled one of the bowls, which he handed to Granddad with both hands. "Here's to you and our aging hero," he said. "You've brought glory to our country." As he said, "Woo woo gun gun," I watched him raise the bowl to his lips. His wrinkled neck twitched, and his Adam's apple slid up and down as he drank. Most of the wine ran down his chin and onto his chest instead of sliding down his throat. I recall our walks in the field. He held my hand and I led a little black dog with my other hand. His favorite spot was the bridge head over the Blackwater River, where he would stand supporting himself on one of the stone pillars for most of the morning or most of the afternoon, staring at the bullet holes on the bridge stones. When the sorghum was tall, he would take me into the field to spot not far from the bridge. I suspected that was where Grandma had risen to heaven, an ordinary piece of black earth stained by her blood. That was before they tore down our old home. One day, Granddad picked up a hoe and began digging beneath a catalpa tree. He picked up some cicada larvae and handed them to me. I tossed them to the dog, who chewed them up without swallowing them. "What are you digging for, Dad?" asked my mother, who was anxious to go to the dining hall. He looked up at her with a gaze that seemed to belong to another world. She walked off and he returned to his digging. When he dug a pretty deep hole, he cut through a dozen or so roots of varying thickness and removed the flagstone, then took a misshapen tin box out of an old dark brick kiln. It crumpled when it fell to the ground, revealing a long rusty metal object taller than me, which was showing through the rotting cloth wrapping. I asked what it was. "Woo woo gun gun," he said. Granddad laid the rifle on the ground to soak up the sun, and then sat down in front of it. His eyes opened 1 minute and closed the next, over and over and over. Finally, he got to his feet, picked up an axe, and began chopping up the rifle. When it was no more than a pile of twisted metal, he took the pieces and scattered them widely around the yard. "Dad, is Mom dead?" Father asked. Granddad nodded. "Dad!" Father shrieked. Granddad stroked Father's head, then drew a small sword from his hip and chopped enough sorghum to cover Grandma's body. A blast of gunfire erupted on the southern dike, followed by sanguinary shouts and the sounding of exploding grenades. Granddad dragged Father over to the bridgehead. At least 100 soldiers in gray uniforms burst from the field south of the bridge, driving a dozen or so Jap soldiers onto the dike, where they were cut down by bullets or run through with bayonets. Father saw detachment leader Lang a holstered revolver hanging from his wide leather belt, surrounded by several burly bodyguards. His troops were flanking the burning trucks and heading west. The sight drew a strange laugh from Grandad, who planted his feet at the bridgehead, pistol in hand, and just stood there. Detachment leader Lang swaggered up. "You fought a good fight, Commander Yu, you son of a bee," Grandad spat out. "We almost made it in time, good brother. You son of a bee. You'd be done for if we hadn't arrived, you son of a bee." Grandad aimed his pistol at Detachment Leader Lang, who flashed a signal with his eyes. Two ferocious bodyguards quickly forced Grandad's arm down. Father raised his running pistol and fired into the ass of the man holding Grandad's arm. The other guard sent Father reeling with a kick, then stepped on his wrist, bent down, and picked up the Browning. The bodyguards tied up Grandad and Father. "Pocky Lang, open your dog eyes and take a look at my men." The dikes on both sides of the road were strewn with the bodies of dead and wounded soldiers. Burglar Liu was still sounding his horn intermittently, but blood now flowed from the corners of his mouth and from his nose. Detachment leader Lang removed his cap and bowed towards the sorghum field east of the road. Then he bowed to the west. "Release Commander Yu and his son," he ordered. The bodyguards let him go. "Go." Blood was seeping through the fingers of the man who was holding his hand over his wounded ass. Detachment leader Lang took the pistols from the bodyguards and returned them to Grandad and Father. His troops were rushing across the bridge, past the trucks and the Jap bodies, gathering up machine guns, carbines, bullets, cartridge clips, bayonets, scabbards, leather belts and boots, wallets, and razors. Some jumped into the river, where they captured the Jap hiding behind the stanchion and raised up the old Jap's body. "This one's a general, detachment leader," one of Lang's officers shouted. Detachment leader Lang excitedly looked over the railing. "Strip off his uniform and pick up everything that was on him." He turned back and said, "We'll meet again, Commander Yu." Bodyguards fell in around him as he headed to the southern edge of the bridge. "Stop right there, Lang," Grandad bellowed. Detachment leader Lang turned and said, "Commander Yu, you're not planning on doing anything foolish, are you?" "You won't get away with this," Grandad snarled. Tiger Wang, leave Commander Yu a machine gun. A soldier walked up and laid a machine gun at Grandad's feet. "You can have the trucks and the rice they're carrying." Detachment leader Lang's troops crossed the bridge, formed up ranks on the dike, and marched east. The trucks were nothing but charred frames by the time the sun was setting. The stench from the melted tires was nearly suffocating. The bridge was blocked by the two undamaged trucks at either end. The river was filled with the water as black as blood. The fields were covered with sorghum as red as blood. Father picked up a nearly whole fish cake from the dike and handed it to Grandad. "Here, Dad, eat this. Mom made it." "You eat it," Grandad said. Father stuffed it into Grandad's hand. "I'll get another one," he said. Father picked up another fish cake and savagely bit off a chunk.